It Was Always You, a Hallmark movie. I wanted to talk about this movie today. It's one of my favorites. And I'm going to be, as a disclaimer, I'm going to be looking down through my notes periodically because this movie was really special to me and I really liked it. And it's hard to remember every little thing I wanted to say about it because most of the Hallmark movies, I'm just kind of okay with them and I might find them entertaining. But this one, it really resonated with me for some reason. I just loved it. Okay, It Was Always You is a Hallmark movie, and the three characters are Liz, and she's referred to as Liz, Lizzie, and Elizabeth, all three names during the movie, David, and George. And when the movie, another thing I wanted to mention before I start, there are spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't like spoilers, go watch it and then come back to this video. Okay, there's three characters, Liz, David, and George, as I just said. Now, Liz is engaged to George. George and David are brothers. And to give you some background information, Liz grew up with David and George. She lived across the street and her parents did not have a happy marriage. So amidst all the turmoil at her own house, she would come to David and George's house because she felt it was a safe place. And David and George also have a sister named Louise. So Liz is like an extended family member since she was over at their house all the time. So when the story starts, in the beginning, Liz is in the dentist's office with George. And they're talking about, their engagement party and everything. Like they're engaged and they go back to George's home because that's where the engagement party is actually being held. So when they do return to their hometown or where they grew up, Liz is reminiscing about how much she enjoyed going over to George's house when she was a kid because her parents, I guess they argued or something all the time. It just wasn't a happy home. So she would go there because it felt like a safe place. And she reminisced about that. And George just seemed very indifferent. I didn't like George at all. I felt that he was dry and had no personality. He might have been presented that way because basically he was not the right person for Liz. And maybe that's why he was presented in that fashion. Maybe he just looked extra bad to me or extra negative because they didn't belong together. I don't know, but I just know he just didn't he didn't even seem like a real person. He almost seemed like a caricature or something. It was just very off-putting. I did not like him at all. Anyway, when they arrive at, the house where George grew up, Liz discovers that David is coming home because she didn't think David was going to be there. I don't think. David is George's brother. And David is basically her nemesis growing up. When she was growing up, he was always like he would get on her nerves, rattle her and everything. What I really liked was there's a scene where Liz is gonna buy ice cream. She's back at George's house, and she goes out because they're gonna have a surprise birthday party for George and David's mom. So she volunteers to go out and get the ice cream. When she's at the ice cream shop and orders the ice cream, she orders it in a very specific way, and it's not the way most people order ice cream. She had it like you have to watch the movie to see all the specifics, but she wanted 3 or 4 different kinds and she wanted it like actually in specific kinds of containers, and she was very intricate as to how she ordered it. And David happens to be in the ice cream parlor and she doesn't know it. He hears her, hold on. he hears her ordering and recognizes her voice, and he comes around and says something to her. So, um, when she orders the ice cream, I wanted to say that reminded me of the movie When Harry Met Sally. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's old. It's not a Hallmark movie. It was out decades ago with I think it's Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal, but double check that. I'm not sure. But anyway, that movie, Sally would order food throughout the movie the same way Liz ordered the ice cream and It Was Always You. So what I really liked about the ice cream scene, she finds out that, she sees David and he asks about how George popped the question. And she mentions how George proposed to her and it was very businesslike. And she even tells David, that it wasn't romantic at all. It was more of a practical thing, almost like a business arrangement. And it sounded very cold and sterile. Again, it reminded me of the way I feel about George, because I thought George was cold and sterile. And when she tells David that there was no, chemistry between her and George, it was mostly like, it was very practical. She says she doesn't really need romance. And he says, yeah, who needs romance? But what I thought was kind of cute and endearing, he takes a lot of all the change and stuff out of his pockets. He's going to try and pay for the ice cream, but he doesn't have US dollars because David travels around the world, like in the Peace Corps. I can't remember what exactly he does, but he has a job where he's traveling all the time. So he has foreign money in his pocket, so he can't pay for the ice cream with that. So Liz pays for it. And when she sees he's emptied out his pockets, she sees this rabbit's foot. She said, well, what is this, your good luck charm? And I liked it when he said, you don't remember that. And she said, no, she didn't remember. She didn't know what he was talking about. It was a rabbit's foot that she used to keep attached to her backpack when she was 12 years old. They had some kind of a conflict or something in a movie theater and the rabbit's foot fell off, but he picked it up and actually kept it all these years and he still carried it. I thought that said a lot. And then they just have this playful banter between them and they irritate each other. But what happens that changes the whole course of the story, because like I said, Liz is very practical. She has a list for everything, kind of like George. She has her list and she knows what she wants to do. Everything is mapped out. David's just the opposite. So they clash a lot. But this clashing comes to a head when George has to leave, because George, he's like really manic about his dental practice. Granted, Liz works in the dental practice as well, but she is not as manic as George. George is like, takes it over the top. He's supposed to be off for the next few days for the engagement party and for his mom's birthday party. But when he gets an emergency phone call from the dentist, from one of his patients, he doesn't let the person that's filling in for him while he's off, he doesn't let the stand-in do the dentist work. He goes to do it. He says she's a problematic patient and it has to be him to do it. So he leaves. So Liz is left there with David. And that's when everything starts shifting, because David knows Liz. He knows how she is. So what happens after that, David helps Liz to do the wedding planning because George is not there. Because when he leaves, when he tries to come back, there is a big storm and the bridge collapses. So he can't get over the bridge to go home. So they said it was going to take a few days for the bridge to get fixed. So he's stranded. So since George can't come, David has to fill in for George as Liz does her wedding planning. And that's when you really see them actually banter a lot. And it shows how much he really knows Liz. And the whole wedding planning thing where he was a stand-in, like where David's standing in for George since George is absent, it reminded me of another movie. It reminded me of a country wedding, because in a country wedding they had in a country wedding, they show that on Hallmark all the time. They're always showing that movie. Catherine Mann is supposed to marry Bradley Sutton. She's not able to be there to help him plan his wedding. So Sarah, his childhood friend, is like a stand-in for Sarah. Is like a stand-in for Catherine Mann, his fiance. The same premise was used in that movie, where you have somebody else standing in for someone that the character is going to marry, and the person that they're going to marry is the wrong one, but the person that's the stand-in is the right one. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of complicated. It's hard to explain. And this movie also reminded me of Bridal Wave. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but that one involved Georgie and Luke. And Georgie was getting ready to marry someone with that kind of like with It Was Always You. Georgie was going to marry someone she worked with in the medical field, but he was the wrong person for her. They just got engaged because it was practical. She liked Luke. Luke is somebody who I believe I haven't seen Bridal Wave in a long time, but I believe Luke turns up like when they're doing the rehearsal dinner and stuff. And I want to say that in Bridal Wave, Luke is a stand-in for the groom, but it might not be as much of a stand-in as David was, but he was a big I think he was a little bit of a stand-in when they were doing the rehearsal dinner or doing some of the planning for their wedding. But anyway, another scene I really enjoyed from It Was Always You, the wedding cake scene. The wedding cake scene is when she's trying to pick her wedding cake. And she had told David, don't come into the wedding cake store. I'm doing this myself. Don't bother me. Because I think he rattles her because he knows her. Even though she's got her little list and says, I want vanilla cake. He's like, vanilla's boring. He goes, you're a Neapolitan girl with sprinkles and a cherry on top. It's like he's telling her she needs to live more. So, take a chance on things. Don't leave it to a structured list. And there's one scene where she's getting the key lime pie. There's an oyster bar where they go to eat a few times, and she's eating the key lime pie, and David wipes the cream off of her mouth, and they share a look. They share this long look. It is just so cute when they do that. And they stare at each other for a little while. And another scene that I really liked, when Liz is talking to David's grandma. Sorry. David and George's grandma. David and George's grandma talks about when she fell in love. And she talks about how she was supposed to marry somebody else, but there was no spark between them. But the guy she married, there was a spark between them. And even the grandma tries to tell Liz that there's that spark between her and David. And Liz is like, you mean between me and George? And she said, that's what I said. But she's trying to tell her that you need to give David a chance. You guys need to investigate this. So I do like it when she talks to David about her trip to Italy. Because David asked her, did she ever go? Because she had a little list that she had written a long time ago when she was a kid. And David still had it. It was in their house somewhere, stuck in a book. And so he asked her if she ever went. And she said no. And she said she didn't think George would ever want to go. Now, that's a big red flag for me right there. If you can't even take a trip, it's different if you can't afford it and you're barely making ends meet. I get that, but they're not in this situation in this movie. She says that she didn't think George would want to go. And he said, well, George isn't the only person in this marriage. I think if George knew, he would support you on this and let you go to Italy. And it's such a small request. I don't think it's even that big of a deal if you've got the money to go to Italy, especially if that's what you've always wanted to do. But that was a big red flag for me. And so David seems to be more supportive of Liz's dream than George. And I love it when they were eating popcorn. They were eating popcorn watching a romantic movie. David and Liz. Again, George is gone this whole time because the bridge is down. And when they're eating the popcorn in the family room, and they watch this romantic movie, and she asked him, how would you romance her? And his response is truly phenomenal. And I think Liz is taken aback about how romantic David really is. So, my favorite scene was when they go to do the bridal registry, because David is just like, he doesn't know anything about bridal registries. And a lot of men don't. They just don't know about them. That's usually a woman's thing. A lot of times a man's not going to really know much about creating a bridal registry and that sort of thing. So he tells her, I don't understand what we're doing. What's the whole point? And she explains it to him. And so she's got her list of things. But David, again, makes her see herself as she really is, not what she thinks, the way she thinks she is from her list. So when they're going through the bridal registry, picking items, he kind of encourages her to get stuff that's not on her list or get something different. And she kind of breaks the mold of what she's created for herself by following this list and starts expanding the stuff she normally wouldn't get, because she has this little gun that she uses to record what she needs to. It's like I don't know what the correct word for it, but she can snap a picture or like a little gun that snaps each item, and I guess it records it so that she can create a registry. But it is so cute when he is encouraging her to pick all this stuff, and she keeps shooting the little gun to every little item that she wants. And then he says, pick whatever you want. And she does it to him when she takes the gun and actually points it at him. That is the cutest thing. And she goes, oh, the scanner slipped. It was a scanner. I'm sorry. I called it a gun, but it was a scanner that had slipped. And so she said, oh, the scanner slipped. He goes, that's okay. But again, he's the right person for her. That's why she did that. And I liked how she started changing throughout the movie, because another scene I liked was when her and David went to check out the DJ, to make the arrangements with the DJ. And when they did that, the DJ asked, well, where do you have a list of items a list of songs that you want me to play? And she's still taken aback about what happened at the bridal registry, where she took the scanner and scanned David as if she wanted him. So I think she's a little bit taken aback as how she's been changing since she's been alone with David. So she doesn't really hear what the DJ is saying. And then David's like, do you have your list? And she goes, I think I forgot it at home. And he goes, that's okay. The DJ's like, that's okay. I got a lot of things that I have cooked up for you too. And of course, typical Hallmark, someone assumes they're a couple and they're not a couple, but they should be a couple. That's basically what happens. He goes, and they go, oh, we're not a couple, but they really are a couple. They just don't know it yet. So he puts a slow song on, and he has to leave the room, the DJ, for a little bit to take care of something at his house. So he says he's going to leave this slow song on them for them to try out, and then he would come back. And he turns the lights off and has this disco ball going, and they start dancing. It is the sweetest thing. Oh, I love that scene when they're dancing. And then she leaves abruptly because she's just so overtaken with the changes within her. And what happened? And so when she leaves, the DJ comes back to get his deposit, and David's like, just hold up, we'll call you, because she just kind of leaves without saying anything. So, another scene I liked was when she enjoyed dancing with David. She liked it. She might not have been vocal about it, but it felt right being in David's arms when they were testing out the song for the wedding. But when when George returns from the bridge, okay, because they found out that the bridge had been repaired and that George was returning. Because when that's announced that George was coming back, the lights go out. It's like the announcement. It was like almost like it was like a foreshadowing type of thing. They're in the room. I think they might be watching a movie or something, and it was announced that George was on his way back, and then the lights just go out. Anyway, when George returns, like I said, he's been gone a long time, and Liz has been through a lot of changes, and she's been alone with David all this time, and he returns, and what I didn't like I said, George reminds me of a caricature or something, or some this pasty cutout figure or something. He returns, and when he sees her, it's like he doesn't, when he sees Liz, it's like he doesn't know what to do. He kind of leans over, he goes, "Oh, Liz," or Lizzie or whatever. And then he hesitates, like he doesn't know what to do with his own, you're engaged. He bends over and just presses this little chaste kiss on her cheek, like almost as a duty. It's not like he had a desire to kiss her. It was very heartbreaking. But anyway, she tells him that she's been thinking since he's been gone, and she wants to take a trip to Italy or Paris or something. And he's like, no. He basically said that they need to focus on the dental practice, and they couldn't be gone from their patients that long. And they couldn't go on a trip, and leave their patients like that. They couldn't do that until they're like maybe old and retired. And she goes, "It's just a silly dream of mine." But she asked him to dance with her because she had danced with David and really liked it. And George is like, "What?" George doesn't seem to understand why she would want to dance, but she makes him do it. And I believe they danced to the same song to which she danced with David. It's so stilted and awkward. It was like two strangers who don't even like each other are trying to dance. And then George finally says, "Are we done here?" It was so pathetic. It really was. And then the engagement party happens. When the engagement party happens, that was a pivotal scene where she actually breaks up with George. I think she dances again with David during the engagement party, and then she tells George this isn't going to work. Since the bridge collapsed, and she goes, you always adhere. No, she said, I can't adhere to like a list of things anymore, a structured list. That's not me. And he said, well, he had to have a structured list. And she said, "George, that's great, but I'm not the right person for you." So he asked if there's anything that he could do to change her mind. I'm surprised he even said that, because the way he's been acting this whole movie, I would have thought he would have been relieved and said adios. But he asked if there was anything he could do to change her mind. So maybe he did have a few feelings for her, but she said no and gave the ring back. They hug each other, and then David sees them hugging each other. I guess it's implied that David thinks that they're reconciling, but of course they're not. But I kind of like how David, they take it's like a year, fast forward a year. I like how David let her go travel for a year. It's not like he wanted to invade her space, because she needed some time to find herself. So she goes traveling for a year, and they reconnect when David and George's sister Louise gets married. And that's another side story that was kind of cute. And another thing I liked was when they had the engagement party. I'm going back. I know I've been doing this in chronological order, but I'm going to go back. Louise's dress at the engagement party, when they had the engagement party for David and George, Louise had a nice dress on. I wonder who made it. I should ask Hallmark, because I thought it was the cutest dress. And I also like when they were at the engagement party, her and David danced, and then they were holding hands for a little bit after they danced at her engagement party to George. Her engagement party to George, the engagement party that she was having, because she was going to get married to George. She danced with David, and after her and David danced, they made some kind of special announcement. But when you look, the camera honed in on her and David holding hands, which I thought was sweet. And anyway, like I mentioned, she takes a year and travels to all the places that she wanted to travel to, because even David had told her, you should go to Paris too. And he told her about how walking along the sand and eating profiteroles. I can't remember what it was that he said that he ate, that some kind of a cookie or something that he ate in Paris that she should try. So anyway, she takes a year and does that, and she comes back. And when they're at Louise's wedding, at the end of at the reception of Louise's wedding, David is there, and her and David start talking, and that's when they basically reconnect again. And I also like that George, even though I didn't like him that much, I liked how he connected with, I believe the woman's name is Denise. She had red hair, and she worked with him in the practice. She's just as passionate about dentistry as George is. So it's kind of implied. Their attraction is kind of implied in a scene or two during the movie. But at the end, you see him dancing with Denise, I think, or his assistant from the dentist practice. And so you know that they're together and they're okay, and that's fine. George has somebody who matches his, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, cookie cutter lifestyle. And I wanted to end this long video with how I can relate to this movie. I can relate to wanting to travel because I've always, like when I grew up, we didn't really have a whole lot financially. I mean, we made do. We had plenty of food. We had a place to live and stuff. But we never went anywhere. And I always wanted to, because I took French in high school, and I took 4 years of French in high school, and in my senior year, I took Spanish 1 and French 4 at the same time. And then in college, I took 5 semesters of Spanish. So, and I always would look at different places that I would like to travel to. I always wanted to go to Europe, but I never had the means to go. But I did go after I graduated from college and I started working. I worked for a travel agency, so I got discount travel. I traveled a lot of places. So how I can relate to this movie, I can relate to wanting to travel and go out there and see the world and experience new things. It's something that I always wanted to do, and I'm glad I was able to do that. So that's all that I believe I had to say about the movie. And thanks for listening to this. Thanks for listening and watching this video in its entirety. And before I sign off, I wanted to say, if you like movies such as It Was Always You and other Hallmark movies, you should give my books a try. You should try Rocky Road Dreams. That's the favorites of one of my favorite novels that I've written. I've written a lot of them. So just go to my website, CECELIADOWDY.com/books. And all of my books are there. You'll see every single title. But Rocky Road Dreams, kind of like David and Liz, the two characters in this story, they grew up together. And he always had a crush on her. So, but now they're adults reconnecting, kind of like David and Liz. And there's a little bit of a mystery involved. And they both get to know stuff about themselves. So, as they fall for each other. You will love this book. It has gotten so many 5-star ratings and reviews. I will leave the link in the comment. I'll also leave a link up here. And my books are all on Amazon, and the paperback versions are on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The only book that is not available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon is the ebook version of Butterscotch Bliss. So if you join my mailing list, you can get an ebook for free that's not available on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Butterscotch Bliss is another book of mine. It's a Christmas story, and the paperback version is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but the ebook version is not. The ebook version has to be gotten directly from me, and it's free if you join my email list. And I'll leave the link up here as to how to join. So check these books out, and there's a lot of other books. They're sweet, low spice or no spice, and you will love them. And don't forget to tell your friends, because a lot of people, when they read my books, they say it reminds them of a Hallmark movie. So a lot of my books are like that. So you should give them a try. Thanks for listening to this video in its entirety, and I hope you have a great day.